guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Tita Lavinia of Tita's Pageantry, and for this episode, I will be playing Pass or Fail with you, and this is of course in connection to my ultimate Miss Universe 2021 gown review. So please make sure you stick around, please subscribe to the channel, as well as hit that bell notification button for your weekly pageant fix. I know a lot of you have been waiting for this. Guys, so I'm really happy to bring this episode to you because I put in a lot of effort and a lot of research work into this, and I want to give you something that you probably might have not read in other articles or maybe in other pages. So I'm really happy that I took some time off to really wait for the materials to come in, to wait for BTS, to also wait for HD photos. So I will get there later on. Okay, so let's start with the first call out for top 10, and this is of course Paraguay's Nadia Ferreira. Now Nadia of course was a heavy favorite in the competition very early on, so for her to be called first and to slip into top 10 easily, there was no surprise there. Nadia was one of the candidates who did not change her evening gown from prelims to finals, which for me meant that the team felt really strongly about this gown look. She did tweak her styling a little bit, and I think that really helped. Now, according to my source materials, the gown was made by a label called Il Sahara. Now, I'm not so sure if I'm pronouncing this right, but according to the bio, Il Sahara is a label that works with wearable art and that they are inspired by nature, and rightly so. If you go ahead and check out their Instagram page, you're gonna see more of their creations, and very early on you'll get to really discern that nature really plays a role in the techniques that they employed, as well as the actual design of their garments. Now, speaking of nature and how this plays with Nadia's dress, apparently the dress is inspired by water, it's inspired by life. And according to the write-up, they wanted to showcase that water is a vital resource, that it signifies continuous movements, it represents the opening, strength, and adaptability. And I think that Nadia was also able to display this during her final presentation when she moved her dress around, when she played with her dress and showcased other parts of the dress. For example, that arm detail with the pleated treatment. I thought that she was really very successful in showcasing the water-like qualities of her actual gown. Now, the gown itself is a mesh gown that is long-sleeved, and it was adorned by crystals, but I think what's important about this garment is the make of the bodice, because it seemed like a puzzle. So if you look at it closely, it's actually fabrics or ribbons that are sewn together to form a wave-like pattern, and some of the panels are even adorned with crystals. So if you know that this has something to do with sea life, then you would have an idea that the bodice part could actually be tentacles, they could be sea creatures, or they could even be seagrass. So what I like about this is that it was light, it was airy, it was frothy, and it made me think of sea foam. And it was really nice that it popped against the dark and futuristic background. So, if we thought that Nadia was fairy-like during prelims, then this time around she is a definite pass for me, as she showed us more of that sea goddess in this beautiful mint green dress. Next call out is someone really controversial these days. I am talking about Michelle Marie Colon of Puerto Rico. Now, I know that her gown had mixed reactions, but I'm going to try and make a case for it. Maybe you could understand why I feel the way I feel about this gown. So, first of all, the designer of the gown is a father and son duo named Eli Biton and Yehuda Biton. No, Louis Biton is not. I just had to insert that joke because everybody's so tight. But yeah, it's a father and son duo, and I don't know if I read the translation right, but apparently they own one of the biggest, if not the biggest, embroidery company in Israel. So apparently the dress is a tribute to the beautiful mountains and the beautiful Negev desert, because the predominant colors of this dress is actually yellow and mustard to signify the desert, as well as gray to represent night and cold. So if you look at it, this is a dress that isn't very typically a pageant dress. I mean, it's sexy, but I think this is more of an editorial dress. That's why a lot of people were 50-50 with it. But this dress took a lot of manpower to do because it took them 400 hours to complete this. They hand embroidered each panel according to the cut. So if you notice, it's pretty precise and it fit really well on Michelle. Now, this dress has 40 different types of stones and sequins as well as crystals, and I honestly thought that she looked really, really beautiful in this dress, and only because I wasn't such a fan of her prelims look. However, even if the dress is a pass for me, I think that what brought down the whole presentation was how she walked, and I think that a lot of us have already discussed this. So the dress is a pass, the movements not so much. Third on top 10 was Elle Smith, Miss USA. Now, Elle wore one of the heavy-hitting designers in the whole competition. She was, of course, in a beautiful aqua blue Michael Cinco creation. Now, this is a bespoke creation, which means that this was made especially for her. I love the fit. I love the color. The dress itself is a crystallized blue zircon gown. So this had to be put individually, and it had a wavy pattern and a little bit of a hint of an exposed corset. So I thought that the dress fit nicely. I thought that this was a beautiful dress. However, I am going to add fail to this only because I felt that the overall styling just did not align with how I saw Elle. And I also felt that her prelims gown, also from Mr. Cinco, was a better choice. And I think that maybe blue or aqua blue is not her color. And looking at how she presented herself, it just brought me back to the 90s, which is not very good because that means that the whole look was just really dated. So now, the fourth call out was actually the biggest winner of the night. I am, of course, talking about Miss India, Harnaz Sandhu. Now, Harnaz changed her gown. She had a pink gown for the prelims and then changed into a silvery moonlight gown for the finals. Now, the designer of the finals gown is Saisha Sinde, and this is a fully embellished gown with linear and mosaic patterns. Now, Harnaz is very curvy. She has an hourglass figure, so to put her in a column dress and really accentuate her curves was a really good move, I think. And I also like the fact that they added some fringe detail for movement. Now, I would love to play this video for you because I think that Saisha was the one who explained this make beautifully. So go ahead and check this out.
I'm very excited that I get to design the finale gown for Harnaz for Miss Universe 2021. So the evening gown for her is actually quite magical because it's divided in 3 parts. You know, Harnaz has a personality which is bubbly, but at the same time she's very sharp. And I wanted to sort of incorporate these emotions into the gown. So you've got these linear lines that are right in the center, so that she looks a lot more elongated than she already is. Then there's this mosaic pattern on the side, which shows that she's complex and she wants to learn and she wants to understand things. And then of course there's a lot of scatter, which shows that she's willing to grow. She wants to learn and see everything. And the color is silver because that's a winning color. And we really feel that she's going to win it this year. I hope this gown does justice to her, and I've absolutely loved making it for her. I know she's going to kill it. She's got the face, she's got the body, she's got the personality, she can talk really well. All the best, Harnaz. Bring back that crown.
So there you go. I think that she looked really beautiful. I thought that silver was a good choice because usually when you have a complexion like that or a skin tone like that, I would normally go for warmer tones like maybe gold or copper or maybe rose gold. But yeah, she went for full-on silver and she looked like the moon goddess. So this was definitely a pass for me. The fifth call-out of the evening was one of the biggest placers for Miss Universe. I'm talking about Lalela Maswane of South Africa. Now, it seemed like she had the weight on her shoulders, not having the support of the government, not having the support of I suppose, people in South Africa, but the organization did not fail her. The organization made sure that she would step on that Miss Universe stage looking her absolute best. And I'm really proud that she chose another Filipino designer, this time of Ezra Santos of Ezra Couture. Now, if this dress seemed familiar to you, then because it is. This dress was actually from a 2019 collection of Mr. Santos, and this was also featured on Vogue Arabia. Now, if you notice, the treatment has a little bit of similarities with that gown that Kelly Day wore, but this was because it came from the same collection. Now, the only change that was made to the dress, I don't know if they made a different dress for her or if they just modified this, but the only change that I noticed was the mesh. From the collection, from the fashion collection, it was a nude mesh, but for Lalela, they changed it into black. And I think that this was a really good move because it really popped. Now, what is very interesting about this dress is that the pattern and the beadwork, it's actually very similar to Bea's, but the impact is also a little different because this one is more warrior-like. Now, this gown, if you notice the patterns that you see on the embroidery, it has a lot of references to Islamic art, and this is because this came from a collection called Tales of Arabia, inspired by Arabian nomads, Andalusian, and Islamic art. So I really like that Lalela, being, you know, the strong in-command woman that she is, I really like that she was in gold, she was commanding, and that dress could actually work for the types of movies like Dune, maybe even Star Wars. Next call out for me is someone who made history for the Bahamas, and I am of course talking about Chantel O'Brien. Now, Chantel wore another design by a Filipino. His name is Garimon Raferos, and he is a Dubai-based designer who has done couture creations in the past. Now, if Harnas was the moon and Bea was the sun, then I would think that Chantel was the brightest of the stars of the universe because she wore an intricate hand-embroidered silver glass beaded dress studded with Swarovski rock crystals, and it was all over her dress, from the sleeves to the bodice to that high slit of a skirt. So she was really shimmering and splendid that evening, and with her very short hair, I thought that she was someone who's just really so hard to miss. This was a pass in my book. The next to be called out is, of course, the Philippines, but I will reserve her last, so I know I have your attention. So I'm going to skip her and talk about Miss Franz Clemens Butino. Now, she was one of the contestants who changed her gown from prelims to finals, and if I may, I don't know why she did that. So the gown itself was made by a Polish design house called La Metamorphose. Now, this design company does make a lot of gowns with cutouts, and they do make, you know, very ethereal types of clothes. So this time around, she was in a nude gown. It had a little bit of a cutout and it was shimmery. Unfortunately, these are the only adjectives that I could give you because there really isn't a lot to talk about when you describe this gown. So the color is a little obscure for me. I can't figure out if this is nude or champagne or blush. Maybe that's not good because I felt that her overall styling for prelims was more successful. Yeah, it was a little forgettable. So I'm so sorry, Miss France. This is a fail for me. Next, of course, is the commanding Colombian Valeria Ayos. Now, I thought that she had one of the most well-received gown looks in the evening. However, I know that there will be talks on the same thing over and over again now. I'm with you on this. So the gown, of course, was made by established Colombian designer Alfredo Barraza, who I feel, up until this day, makes beautiful clothes for the Colombian girls, but maybe not so much for the Filipinos when he had his stint here. So yeah, shoot me for that, but seems to be true. Now, this gown, let me just tell you, it seemed like it's part of a Colombian beauty queen starter kit, if there is such a thing. First of all, the color is like a color of all of the highlighters in the world. So you really can't figure out if it's silver or gold or maybe copper. I mean, when you think about it and when you align them together from what, 2014, it pretty much looks like you've bought a set of highlighters. But of course, I'm going to give this to the Colombian team because the fit is always impeccable. Again, the cut is very similar. They always go for that strapless action going on. It's always semi-sweetheart. It's always cut close to the body that flares for more movement at the hem, and it's always embellished. Now for Valeria's gown, they really banked on her physique. They really banked on her expert beauty pageant, beauty queen movements. And her gown was an embellished lattice gown. So it was a lattice fabric that had linear crystal embellishments in different colors. So that's why it's a little difficult to discern what the color is with the Colombian gowns. That's why I made the highlighter reference, because depending on which light hits you, it actually changes. So it does have a holographic feel actually, because of her beautiful skin tone and even her perfect styling from prelims up until finals without changing the gown, because the Colombians, they rarely change their gowns. I thought that this was a major pass. Of course, one of the happiest contestants to make it to top 10, I'm talking about Miss Aruba's Tessie Zimmerman. Now, her gown was made by John Lixal. Now, if you're not familiar with him, he also did the beautiful gowns of Miss Costa Rica from the last edition, Yvonne Cerdas. He made the beautiful red gown for the finals, as well as the beautiful yellow gown for the prelims. So very early on, if you are familiar with the designer, then you would know that the contestant wearing his work is already in good hands. And I think that Tessie looked amazing. So she was in a column dress. It was fully beaded as well. It had a lot of mesh details and a lot of embroidery details, but it did not feel heavy. It did not feel heavy-handed. Really like the confidence that this dress brought her. This dress also was a nice complement to her overall styling, which was of course a nod to Taryn Mansell, who 25 years ago placed first runner-up against Alicia Machado in 1996. So they really had that hair thing going on, and I thought that the whole styling was just really impeccable. So this was a definite pass for me. Before I move on to Miss Philippines, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the glittering panel of judges who stole the show. So my favorite look was that of Urvashi Rautela. She was in a black veiled creation by the fabulous Michael Cinco, of course, and I thought that she could, again, be one of the contestants at Miss Universe. I thought she was really eye-catching in that veiled creation. Aries Mitanar also looked like an Oscar trophy. She was also in a gold Michael Cinco. I thought that this fit her to a T. Very beautiful. Adriana Lima was in Galia Lahav. It was a suit type of gown, but I think what was really eye-catching for me were the pair of Annabelle Chan earrings that she wore. Our very own Marian Rivera was pretty in pink, wearing Francis Libiran, and there was another judge out there who wore Janina Azar. Her name is Edmary Lopez. So yeah, I thought that the judges looked absolutely stunning that evening as well. So now let's go into our very own Beatrice Luigi Gomez, who wore a golden pintadas inspired gown by Francis Libiran. Now let me just go back a little further, because I feel like there is this continuous fascination with pintadas, and let me just tell you that this isn't a foreign idea, at least on Miss Universe. So when I was young, my first encounter with pintados on the international stage, and not from books because I've always been really into history, was when I saw a collection from Ino Soto from 1995. I remember this because I used to cut pages off of a magazine and compile them into collages. The Pintadas collection of Ino Soto was one of my first recollections of a Pintadas garment being showcased on the international level, and this was from a well-received fashion show in 1995 in Paris. Yeda Marie Romualdez, or now Yeda Marie Romualdez, the congresswoman, well, she actually wore the Pintadas bodysuit in 1996 when she competed at Miss International. Now, let's move forward to 2004. We saw another Pintadas creation. This time, it was interpreted by Alfredo Barraza, and it was worn by Maricar Balagtas. And although I really like this costume, I also felt that this was met by a lot of resistance, because if you look at it, the Pintadas bodysuit seemed accurate, but all the other trappings were like, where can you see that in Philippine culture? It was a creation in which Alfredo Baraza took creative license. Kylie Versosa, when she wore that golden pintados bodysuit as her national costume for Binibining Pilipinas, which was of course created by the Rajo Laurel. And of course, who can forget the 2018 Catriona Gray pintados bodysuit, in which she wowed the crowd with that huge parol and that offering that says Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. So I think we've always been fascinated by it. But this was actually the first time that the pintados motif transitioned into an evening wear, and I think a lot of us are still really hooked by it. In 2021, we are still fascinated with this gown. The silhouette, of course, is really very flattering. I've said this before, it's flattering for all body types because of that goddess thing going on, because of that slit. Depending on how high you would make the slit, it could be uber sexy or it could be just tastefully sexy. Now, this gown choice is really tricky because she had several gown choices to begin with. My personal favorite is actually the orange one, if I'm being very honest with you. But looking back at all of the videos that we saw from Francis Libiran when they started publishing this, even if I was drawn to the orange gown, I also felt that probably this wasn't Bea's personality. So I'm pretty glad that out of all the gowns that Francis Libiran made, she chose the gold one. So I personally preferred a black gown for her. Like whenever we would anticipate, or like when we would think of gown pegs that would be perfect for Bea, I always would veer for something a little darker like black. But anyway, I'm still happy that they chose this gold one because I think that this was a nice compliment to her tattoo. I don't exactly know what her tattoo looks like, but I feel like the pattern just continued with the pattern of her dress. So for them to incorporate her tattoo in the design, I thought that was really darling. Now, what I really like about this dress, if I'm being very honest with you, is that it is sensual. It has a slit, but it was there to just add some much needed sex appeal, and because most of her OOTDs during her Miss Universe stint was mostly on the modest side, it was refreshing to see her open up a little bit in terms of the cuts of her dress. I think what was perfect about this dress was its cultural meaning. I mean, it was giving us culture and tradition without the lengthy explanation. Meaning to say, guys, this was not a thesis defense gown unlike Puerto Rico that you had to explain for you to like. Once you see this dress come on stage, whether you're Latina or maybe Indian or maybe from the other powerhouse countries, this is a dress that would hold. I also really like that this dress didn't fade. It wasn't the most heavily embellished dress. It didn't have like so many trappings here and there. It wasn't the simplest either, but it registered well, which is something that I think maybe the team would also be nervous with, because if you're planning on making a garment for the finals, you also have to think of lighting, you also have to think of whether it would register well on camera, and I think that it did, whether it's moving camera or steady photos. So it was intricate, but it didn't overwhelm her because I think that the patterns were small enough, but it was also quite distinct. And I also really like that, I don't know, she just really channeled her badass self, and everything complimented her. And I also like that she did not forget the bling, because for Bea and her fashion campaign here at Miss Universe, again, it's mostly on the simpler side, but this time around she wore a pair of Christopher Monar earrings that was just really long, and I thought that went well with all the tribal feels that this gown represented. So for me, for you guys who have been waiting, this is a definite pass. So there you go, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and I know it's a little longer than usual, but this is the end of Miss Universe 2021 for me, and thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.